Hey guys, Bartel's Bookshelf here with another really big haul. I haven't done any haul videos in a while because, one, I'm trying to cut down on buying books, and two, I just haven't really been finding a whole lot that's been interesting me lately, and also, I have plenty to read, look around you. But me and my friends, Laura and Nakia from Plot Twist, we decided to, for Christmas, instead of doing our usual thing of, gift giving and whatnot, we asked our significant others, and in Laura's case, she just used her own money, to give us some cash to go on a shopping spree. We ended up going to the Book Den in Sacramento, which is basically sort of the big warehouse where the library sort of stores all of their overstock, and you can get things for really cheap. Most books are like $2 at most. And as you can see from this footage here, it's gigantic. There's tons of stuff to find. They've got books of all categories, cooking, history, YA, nonfiction, anything you could want. Tons of romance, tons of mystery, all kinds of stuff. We actually didn't end up finding a whole lot there that we wanted, although I did find this book that I considered buying because, it's got my name on it, but I don't really have any use for yet another cowboy romance book in my life, so I put that one back. But as I said, we were a little disappointed by this haul. We couldn't find a whole lot that really interested us, or at least I couldn't. I only ended up buying about 3 books from there. But then we stopped at our usual haunt of Half Price, and I filled a basket, and I ended up coming away with an armload of books. So I'm going to be talking about those. I ended up getting 11 books in the Andre Norton Witch World series, so I'll go into that, but I also have a bunch of other books that aren't part of a series or aren't part of that anything specific, so I'm going to go through those first. So yeah, let me just get a sip of my coffee and we'll get into this. I'm going to start off with the 4 books that I got from the Book Den. Like I said, there wasn't a whole lot that I was super interested in, but this is what I grabbed. The first is Changer by Jane Lindskold, a novel of the Athanor. I don't know if that's a series of hers or what. I'll have to look more into it. I know Jane Lindskold, isn't she the author of that Through Wolf's Eyes series or something like that? I think I have one of those books. I think I have the first one at least, but this one sounded interesting. As the millennium approaches, King Arthur strives with technology and high magic to protect his immortal subjects from human discovery. He has just one problem. Some of his people think the 20th century is ready to learn that many beings which they believe are creatures of myth actually live among them, part of the secret community known as the Athanor. Manipulating the innocent ambition of these rebels is a secret enemy of Arthur's Accord, a triumvirate whose sorcerous power and ancient hatred will stop at nothing to bring about Arthur's downfall. Then Arthur's enemies arouse the Changer. Wild and strange, he is as old as the sea, a volatile force who refuses to be pinned down to any one shape or name. When nearly all his family are killed, he shakes off coyote form and stalks Arthur's court, demanding aid in his quest for vengeance. When the Changer discovers that his enemies and Arthur's are one and the same, he offers to join forces with the beleaguered king. But soon Arthur learns that his ally may be more dangerous than his enemy, and certainly harder to predict. The Changer's quest for revenge will take him from the deserts of New Mexico to the jungles of Brazil to the depths of the oceans, threatening not only gods, heroes, wizards, monsters, and King Arthur, but also, despite her father's best efforts to protect her, one very vulnerable coyote pup. So yeah, it sounds like an interesting mix of King Arthur and Native American mythology, a bit of urban fantasy. Don't know, never read any Jane Lindskold. I have no idea how she is as a writer, don't know how good this book is, but it sounded interesting. I skimmed the first page and I liked the writing, so we'll see how that turns out. I should actually look into the series and see if this is a sequel or if I missed out on something. I don't think so, but I'll look into it later. Next I have Flesh and Silver by Stephen L. Burns. This is an author I've never heard of, but this sounded like an interesting book. The touch of a healer with the hands of a machine. They are the elite of the medical profession. They can manipulate flesh and blood without surgical tools. They can mend wounds and extract disease with the power of their minds. They live in isolation, shuttled from emergency to emergency. They are the Bergman surgeons. Dr. Gregory Marchi allowed MedArm to replace his hands and forearms with silver limbs. His own flesh and bone seemed a small price to pay for the ability to navigate through the bodies of the ailing with a phantom touch. But his special gifts are met with distrust from both his patients and peers, leaving them separated from mankind. Then he is abducted by the armored angel, Scylla, and taken to the barren world of Ananke. Ruled by a tyrannical despot, the planet's people exist as walking wounded and slave labor. But before Marchi can cure those in need, he must first heal himself. So yeah, I don't know, interesting. Magic doctors, maybe a little bit of sci-fi, some biomechanical stuff, transhumanist stuff. I don't know, seemed interesting. As I said, never heard of this author. Don't know anything about him, but Yeah, we'll see. Sounds interesting. Next, I have In the Company of Ogres by A. Lee Martinez. This is from, as it says there, the award-winning author of Gil's All-Fright Diner. I read Gil's All-Fright Diner a long time ago when I was in, like, middle school, I think, or high school, and I remember liking it. But I don't remember much else about it, but this sounded interesting. For someone who's immortal, never-dead Ned manages to die with alarming frequency. He just has the annoying habit of rising from the grave. But this soldier might be better off dead than face his latest assignment. Ogre Company is a motley, undisciplined group of soldiers whose leaders tend to die under somewhat questionable circumstances. That's where Ned's rather unique talents come in. As Ogre Company's newly appointed commander, Ned finds himself in charge of such fine examples of military prowess as a moonstruck Amazon, a seductively scaly siren, a suicidal goblin daredevil pilot, and a walking tree with a chip on its shoulder. Ned has only 6 months to whip the Ogre Company into shape, but that's not the worst of his problems. Because now that Ned has found out why he keeps returning from the dead, he has to do everything he can to stay alive. So yeah. Sounds entertaining, sounds fun. I enjoy stories about, immortal characters and, ragtag groups who have to be whipped into shape and become warriors. It's obviously in a very humorous style. On the back it mentions, in the tradition of Robert Aspirin and Terry Pratchett. I enjoy that sort of stuff, so we'll see what that's like. Then finally, for the warehouse purchases, this was a middle grade book that sounded interesting, and again, never heard of. This is Children of the Lamp, the Akhenaten Adventure by P.B. Carr. Again, never heard of this, but I read the back and it intrigued me. Meet John and Philippa Gaunt, 12-year-old twins who one day discover themselves to be descended from a long line of jinn. All of a sudden, they have the power to grant wishes, travel to extraordinary places, and make people and objects disappear. Luckily, and luck does have something to do with it, the twins are introduced to their eccentric djinn uncle Nimrod, who will teach them how to harness their newly found power. And not a moment too soon, since John and Philippa are about to embark on a search to locate a monstrous pharaoh named Akhenaten and his eerie tomb. Standing in their way is Iblis, the most evil djinn in the universe. Will the twins be strong and skilled and clever enough to outwit Iblis and live to see another adventure? Considering this is the first in a series, I think that's probably accurate. But yeah, as I said, this just sounded interesting. Children who are descended from jinn and can grant wishes. I'm down for that. I enjoy some good middle grade children's fantasy, so we'll see how that is. So that was all that I bought from the Book Den. The next, everything else I got from Half Price. A lot of vintage sci-fi, because, that's what I'm into, usually when we go searching for used books. A lot of DAW book stuff, which I was really happy to find. So I'll get into that. First off, one that a lot of people probably know, Ring by Koji Suzuki, the basis for the film. I've seen the movie several times, really enjoy it. I'm a big fan of Asian horror and Japanese horror in general. But I've never read the book, and they had this at half price for about $6, so I figured, why not? From what I understand, the movie is pretty faithful to the book, except the journalist in the book is male instead of a woman. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see that. I don't think I've actually read any Japanese horror novels now that I think about it. So it should be an interesting sort of first for me. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out. And I know also if I like this is a part of a series. So I know there's like Spiral and Loop and stuff like that. So I'll have to look into that if I enjoy this. So we'll see how that turns out. Got a big bind up here now, almost 1,000 pages. This is The Shapeshifters, the Kiyashara of the Den of Shadows by Amelia Atwater Rhodes. This is a very famous YA sort of middle grade series about shapeshifters, and from what I hear, they're very strange and unusual, very surreal. I keep seeing the individual novels everywhere, and I keep thinking about buying them, and same with this bind-up. I've seen this before at half price, and it sounded really interesting, and I kept thinking about buying it, and I never did, but since today was all about spending money, at least it was for me, I finally took the plunge, and I decided to try this bind-up. It goes into every single book on the back, but I'll just read the synopsis for the first one. Hawksong, Danica Charday, an avian shapeshifter, will do anything in her power to stop the war that has raged between her people and the Serpiente, even pretend to be in love with Zane Cobriana, the terrifying leader of her kind's greatest enemy, and accept him as her pair bond. But will Zane strike as swiftly and lethally as the Cobra that is his second form? So yeah, that's my kind of thing, shapeshifters, all that kind of stuff. I grew up reading Animorphs, so this could be up my alley. We'll see. I don't know. As I said, this bind-up's over 950 pages, so I hope I like it, because I'm in for a lot of reading if I do. Next, I have another bind-up, actually. This is The Chronicles of Crestomancy, Volume 1 by Diana Wynne Jones. Diana Wynne Jones is, of course, the author of Howl's Moving Castle, among many other fantasy novels for both children and adults. She's one of the many fantasy authors I've always wanted to get into, especially since her tragic death in 2011, I believe. She's, from what I've heard about her anyway, she's very dry, very British, very much an influence on people like Neil Gaiman, and that's right up my alley, so as soon as I saw this, I had to grab it. In the multiple parallel universes of the 12 related worlds, only an enchanter with 9 lives is powerful enough to control the rampant misuse of magic, and to hold the title Christomancy. The Chants are a family strong in magic, but neither Christopher nor Kat can work even the simplest of spells, so how can they hope to thwart the schemes of an avaricious enchanter and a ruthless young witch, schemes that could destroy all the worlds of Christomancy? So yeah, it sounds pretty cool, sounds really imaginative. I believe, I can't remember if it was this series, but I know Diana Wynne Jones and Neil Gaiman were friends, and I think she based one of her characters off of him. It might have been Christopher Chant, I can't remember. I'll have to look into that, but yeah, so that should be doubly interesting. This is the first 2 books in the series, Charmed Life and the Lives of Christopher Chant. For these bind-ups, I don't think they were collected in publication order. They were collected in Diana Wynne Jones's preferred reading order as well, I believe, so that should be interesting as well. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out. This one's just a complete nostalgia purchase that I bought just because we were spending money and it was cheap. This is the Hulk novelization by Peter David. You either remember or you don't remember the Hulk movie. Some of you might be too young, I don't know. But the Hulk, the original Hulk movie from 2003, directed by Ong Lee, was a bit of a disaster. But 11-year-old me was really into it because I've always loved the Hulk. And I remember reading this novelization a long time ago, back when the movie first came out, or maybe it was like right before the movie came out, I can't remember. But it's written by Peter David, who's a very accomplished comics and novel writer. In fact, he wrote a bunch of Star Trek novels, and he actually worked on the Hulk comic himself, I believe, for a really long time, all throughout the 90s. So yeah, he definitely knows what he's writing about, and I flipped through this, and I liked the writing, so I was like, you know what, why not? Maybe there'll be some fun Hulk action in it. We'll see what it's like. So yeah, not much more to say about that, but got a few random DAW books here. I've been watching a lot of Jules Burt's videos recently. He's a British guy who collects vintage paperbacks, especially sci-fi, fantasy, crime, that kind of stuff. He has a couple videos going over his DAW books collection, and it was just so cool and interesting that I was like, man, I want to buy a bunch of DAW book stuff, you know, the classic Yellow Spine stuff. And so I grabbed whatever I could find at half price that looked interesting. I only have 4 books here, but they seem cool and interesting. So the first one here is DAW Books, number 261. This is The Productions of Time by John Brunner. John Brunner is a very famous author, author of Stand on Zanzibar and The Sheep Look Up, I believe. I think I have a copy of Stand on Zanzibar somewhere, I'm not sure, but Murray Douglas had been a theatrical star until he'd hit the bottle once too often. But now he had broken the habit and, handsome and fit, was ready for a comeback. The most challenging opening available was an avant-garde play where the actors themselves would make up the drama as they went along. But out at the isolated country estate where the rehearsals were going on, Murray found himself trapped on a real-life day-and-night stage in which nothing was as it seemed, in which inexplicable devices monitored everything and eerie lures attracted each actor's psychological weakness. Who then was the real sponsor of this terrifying play, and to what alien audience was it to be presented? So yeah, that sounded really interesting, almost like a precursor of like reality television maybe and stuff like that. And of course, as with a lot of these classic Yellow Spine DAW books, the covers are great. I mean, look at that. Some guy who looks like he hasn't slept in 12 years and another guy shooting up. I have no idea what's going on, but it looks cool. Who painted this, does it say? Don Mates. Oh, Don Mates. He did the cover art for the Book of the New Sun series, the original 4 books. So yeah, that's cool. Another cool thing about a lot of these older DAW books that they have like illustrations on the front. So yeah, I love these. These are great. I don't have the space to collect all like 500 or however many there were up to like the 80s or whatever, whenever they stopped doing the Yellow Spines. But I would love to have like a big collection of every single DAW book. So yeah, that's The Productions of Time. Next I have an earlier one. This is number 34. The Wandering Variables by Lewis Trimble. Never heard of this author or this book. Dr. Tandy Venner was an irreplaceable asset to the Charter Worlds Union, so when she decided to take a mind-bending vacation with a U4 Trek team, Jano Keegan was sent along to keep an eye on her. But to qualify for the safari across that mad planet, he too had to submit to the Trekkers' mental conditioning. What was not on the tour program was the unwritten sidetrack their guide had planned for Tandy. What was not on the guide's secret detour was the planet's own out-of-bounds programming. And what was not on any of them was the eccentricity of two brilliant vacationers breaking all the rules to find out what U4 was really all about. So yeah, it sounded weird and interesting, very surrealist potentially. I mean, check out that psychedelic cover art. I enjoy the idea of like wild, surreal safaris, you know. Who did the cover art on this one? Cover art by Kelly Freeze. Never heard of them. But yeah, sounds interesting. And these DAW books are usually always good for a laugh, and they're always usually pretty short. This one's only about 157 pages, so that's why I like them. They're, you know, fun, quick reads. They're fun little vintage things. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Again, another author I've never heard of. I haven't heard of a lot of these authors, but this is number 551, an XT called Stanley by Robert Trebor. Signal from a cosmic databank. In orbit at the New Hope satellite, men finally made contact with a civilization in the stars. It came in the form of a complex signal which enabled the building of a supercomputer to embody it. Top secret, they called the entity Stanley and allowed it to project a humanoid image to speak for it. But that XT, that extraterrestrial intelligence, played a cagey game with its interpreters. Possessed of a databank containing the whole knowledge of an alien superscience, it refused to divulge anything until its own questions about humanity were answered. The battle of wits at New Hope, Stanley versus humanity, scientists versus politician, and possibly planet versus planet, became a growing crisis that could either open up the stars or else put an end to Earth's fondest dreams. So yeah, I love a good first contact story. I love the idea of a supercomputer who's taking on a humanoid form. Aliens playing a battle of wits with humans. It all sounds really fun. Again, don't know anything about this author. This one unfortunately doesn't have a title page illustration, but the cover art is by Kevin Johnson, who, again, never heard of, but yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Next one I have here is another later one. This is number 549, The Mirror of Helen by Richard Purtill. The story of Helen of Troy is one of the great classics of all time, yet there still remains much that could be told. In this unusual fantasy novel, Richard Purtill dares to look behind the scenes to depict in living color what it was really like to be involved with that half-goddess, whose radiant beauty did indeed launch 1,000 ships. Here is Helen as a child, kidnapped and held hostage. Here is Helen as a woman, captive in an alien city while the civilized world sought for her, fought for her. Told as by one who had seen the events, who knew her, who knew the gods who pulled the world's strings, this is a novel that brings it all back in the vivid reflections of the mirror of divine judgment. Yeah, I enjoy retellings. I like Helen of Troy. Cover art looks a bit janky. The proportions on the soldier there are a bit weird, but it's still colorful and interesting. Again, no title page illustration on this one. They seem to stop doing that around like the late 70s, early 80s. Oh, cover art by Don Mates again. Well, I love you, Don, but I don't know. His arm looks a bit weird to me, but we'll see how that turns out. This one I was really happy to find. This is an old Ace book. This is a random Perry Rodan novel. Perry Rodan number 64, The Ambassadors from Oregel by Kurt Mayer. Perry Rodan was I think it's still going, a very, very famous West German sci-fi space opera series that I believe is the longest running science fiction series in the world. There's over 2 billion copies that have been sold, I believe, and there's like countless volumes, to the point where I had no idea where to start, so I was looking it up the other day. And everybody was just saying, oh, just pick one up and see how you like it, because they're all kind of self-contained. A little bit like, you know, Tarzan or those kinds of things, I guess. So yeah, this is number 64. This is part of Ace Science Fiction's English translation that was in the 70s. I don't know how many of these they published, but they only published the first few like early ones. And I believe that whoever the editor was at the time stopped publishing them because they were seen as sort of a juvenile, you know, sort of space opera, kind of hokey. You know, they were not seen as classy literature for the time, which I'm totally okay with. You know, sometimes you just want some goofy space opera stuff, so I'm hoping this is really fun. Groutier, 7th planet of the Myrtha system, inhabited by gray beasts, half elephant, half giraffe, semi-intelligent monkeys known as mungos, and in the low-lying jungle, the alien blue dwarfs equipped with paramechanical and parapsychological powers. Groutier, the new home of the 8,000 colonists exiled from Earth. But the 12th planet of this far-distant solar system also harbors life, the Weird Whistlers, whose recent invasion of Groutier seriously threatened the survival of the colony. Feeling a good offense is the best defense, an intrepid band of men from Groutier repair the spaceship Fair Lady for a most surprising turn of events when they meet up with the ambassadors from Aurigel. It says on the back here, The Colonists Episode 4, so I feel like this might be jumping headfirst into a story arc, but I had a flip through it and it doesn't seem as if you need to know much of what's going on to catch up. And again, a lot of advice I found online, like on Reddit and things, people said, like, just pick one up, see if you like it. So yeah, as I said, these are short. There's only about 150 pages. These Ace Books editions were actually edited by Forrest J. Ackerman, and this one's translated by Wendane Ackerman, who I assume is related to Forey. I'll have to look them up. So yeah, I don't know. Should be entertaining. We'll see. Another DAW Books one, although this is a much later collection. Year's Best Horror Stories, number 15, edited by Carl Edward Wagner. I talked in a wrap-up recently about Volume 4 of this, which I recently read and enjoyed. And I mentioned before, I've been wanting to collect more of the ones in this series, especially the ones edited by Carl Edward Wagner, since those seem to be the most well-regarded ones. And this also has some cool cover art by Michael Whelan, as usual. So yeah, I don't know, should be fun. Who's in this? Let me have a look. Yeah, Robert Bloch, Joe R. Lansdale, Ramsey Campbell, William F. Wu, Charles L. Grant, Ron Lemming, Ron Wolfe, John Alfred Taylor, Dennis Etchison, Wayne Allen Salee, Joel Lane, Tina Rath, W.H. Pugmire and Jessica Amanda Salmonson, David J. Scow, Brad Strickland, Brian Lumley, Jack Dane, and R. Chetwynd Hayes. So a good amount of people I've heard of and people I haven't. So yeah, should be fun. Looking forward to that. Next here I have Strange Invasion by Michael Candle. Spectra Special Editions. Don't know what that line was a part of. But I recently read and reviewed Michael Candle's In Between Dragons, which I really enjoyed. Michael Candle was primarily known as a translator, or is primarily known as a translator. He's still alive, I believe. Especially a translator of a lot of Eastern European science fiction, such as Stanislaw Lem's works. And this is his first novel, published in the 80s, I believe. Yeah, 1989. I really enjoyed In Between Dragons, so I'm interested to see what this is like. When Wally first saw the alien spacecraft land in his backyard, he figured it was just another one of his normal hallucinations, the result of a rare and relatively harmless brain disorder. But then the refrigerator started talking, and the TV began sending him special broadcasts. Slowly, Wally became convinced that the message was very real and very urgent. The Oat have landed, and by the time they leave, the Earth will look like Yasgur's farm after Woodstock. So yeah, it sounds a bit weird, a bit silly. The back compares it to Philip K. Dick and J.G. Ballard and Stanislaw Lem. And I enjoyed, as I said, In Between Dragons, so I was happy to find that. So yeah, we'll see. It's very short. Again, about 150 pages, so let's go. Next I have one I'm really excited to get to. This is On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers. Tim Powers is a historical fantasy author, sort of dark fantasy, very much weaving in real historical periods and characters and ideas into fantasy plots. This is one of his most famous novels, On Stranger Tides, which is a dark fantasy novel about pirates. And in fact, this was actually the basis for a whole bunch of pirate-related media. This is the basis for the Monkey Island series, and this was actually very loosely adapted into the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movie, On Stranger Tides. And it was actually an inspiration for the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie in the first place. They took a lot of inspiration from the overall sort of vibe of the book. So very influential, so one I'm very excited to read. Come sail away on stranger tides, where Blackbeard still terrorizes the Caribbean Sea, where a young bookkeeper becomes the most unlikely swashbuckler, where the ultimate prize is the fountain of youth, and where the dark forces of voodoo spawn a pirate crew of lurching zombies. So yeah, that sounds great. Really looking forward to reading that, and I love that cover art. If it focuses, there we go. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Ghost pirates are always cool. So yeah, we'll see how that one turns out. Next I have a paperback here from Somtau Sucharitkul, The Fallen Country. Somtau Sucharitkul wrote under this name, which I believe was his actual name. Yeah, Somtau Papinayan Sucharitkul he's born in Bangkok. Yeah, he grew up in several European countries and was educated at Eton and Cambridge. He also worked in classical music. I believe he was a classical composer and conductor. A lot of people also know him for writing under the name S.P. Somto, under which he wrote stuff like Moondance, which I read and really enjoyed. So I like his writing, but I'd never heard of this book, so I was interested to check it out. Billy Binder lived in a very different world from the other kids at school. It was a place of eternal cold, a land of snow dragons and ice princesses ruled by a dark figure called the Ringmaster, a world without hope, without fear, without pain, where anger was the greatest weapon, the greatest strength, a land called the Fallen Country. It was a desolate, forsaken place, but it was better than the real world Billy had left behind. Until a group of friends dared to cross over into Billy's private world and help him learn the secret of the Ringmaster's power. So yeah, kids crossing over into fantasy world, ice dragons, what more do you need? It sounds fun. We'll see how that turns out. And then finally, for the half-price haul, I got the first volume in another very famous fantasy series that I have yet to read. This is Darinyi Rising by Catherine Kurtz. Again, heard a lot about this series. Don't know much about it other than it's very well regarded. I've seen Catherine Kurtz around before. A sweeping tale of romance and sorcery set in the imaginary kingdom of Gwynedd, where the mysterious forces of magic and the superior power of the church combine to challenge the rule of young Kelson, who came to the throne when his father was brutally murdered by the sorceress Charissa. The fate of the Darinyi, a quasi-mortal race of sorcerers, and indeed the fate of the 11 kingdoms, rests on Kelson's ability to quash the rebellion by fair means or foul, even by the prescribed use of magic. So yeah, again, don't know much what to say about that, but this is a very early, very famous fantasy series. In fact, one of the, not one of the first, but it was kind of in that early wave of like late 60s, early 70s sort of adult fantasy. I believe this was actually originally published by Ballantine. Yeah, Ballantine. Yeah, 1970. So this is very early sort of modern fantasy, if you want to call it that. So yeah, very influential. So looking forward to reading that. And now, finally, for our feature presentation, we have the 11 books of the Andre Norton Witch World series that I bought, because they just so happen to have a ton of them at half price. These are from all over the place. Some of them are Ace paperbacks. Some of them are Fawcett Crest, some of them are DAW books, but I arranged them all in a loose chronological order here. Unfortunately, they didn't have the very first book, which is just called Witch World, but afterward I may have gone online and bought a bunch of the books I was missing in the series. So I'm in for a ride, hopefully, if I decide to read these. I'm not going to go into detail with all of these. I'll just kind of show them off to you, read the backs. As I said, I put them in loose chronological order. So yeah, you can see it. Since they didn't have the first book, we have to start with the second. This is Web of the Witch World, Counter Magic with Mind, Cunning with Courage. It's pretty cool. Simon Tregarth, whose own earthly prowess had won him a throne and a witch wife in an alien world, knew that both triumphs were precarious as long as the super science of Colder held a foothold on that planet. And his premonitions were right when those invaders from another dimension made their final diabolical strike for total conquest. So yeah, I've heard a lot about this series. It's very influential. It's kind of like Robert Asprin's Thieves' World, which I believe was influenced by this series, where it's kind of this big, expansive universe that's shared by multiple writers, and multiple people have written within that world after Andre Norton. I mean, I honestly don't know much about it, except it's kind of like sword and sorcery, a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy, some magic and stuff. I don't know. Sounds interesting. Next, I have Andre Norton's 3 Against the Witch World. Pretty cool. The offspring of Simon Tregarth, half earthling, half witch brood, realized that they alone could perceive the 4 directions. For everyone else, there was no east. It was a blank in the mind, a blank in legend and history. And when new menaces threatened, the Tregarths realized that in that mental barrier there lay the key to all their world. Somewhere to the unknown eastward must lie the sorcery that had secretly molded their destinies. Ooh. Next one here is Warlock of the Witch World, again by Andre Norton. Killin the warrior, Cathea the untried witch, Kemok whose powers could surpass all others. These are the half-earthling, half-witch-brood family menaced by the sorceries of an unknown enemy. The burden of the struggle fell to Kemok, who was forced to summon his untested powers in the battle to match the alien evil threatening the Witch World. These older ones, I believe these are older ones than the DAW book publications. In fact, when was this? Yeah, 1967. So these Ace book ones are definitely older, and you can definitely tell that's very, very late 60s sort of psychedelic art. Pretty great. Next, I have Sorceress of the Witch World. This looks like Frank Frazetta. In fact, let me check. This has got to be. Oh no, sorry. It's not Frank Frazetta. It says J. Jones. I'm not sure who that is. I'll have to look it up, and I'll put it up here somewhere. I summon your banner. With these words, Cathea the sorceress called forth a power such as no longer existed on the distant planet known as the Witch World. It was a power so great that it could destroy all that she loved best, and might even prove to be a greater evil than the shadow itself. Yet there could be no other choice for Cathea than to call on Hilarion in the death naming, for she was a witch deprived of power and she needed a guide to regain her lost skills and her lost world. There was only this ancient one, the opener of gates, with force mighty enough. So yeah, cool. Again, these are all, I tried to put these in chronological order, but again, I'm missing a lot of these. I've only got about 11 books, and there's like 29 or 31, 29 to 31, depending on how you count them. So these are all out of order, but I tried to kind of arrange them. This is a Tray of Swords. In this long-awaited continuation of Andre Norton's famous Witchworld fantasy saga, the past and future merge as the lost battle of Witchworld is fought again, but this time it must be won. For as ancient heroes walk again by day, so do ancient evils, and it is up to Yonin the Weakling and Kritha the untrained witch girl to halt the forces of darkness by the power of the Sword of Ice, the Sword of Shadow, and one sword more. Ooh. Again, very, very 70s art there. I love that stuff. When was this one published? Yeah, 1977. So yeah, very, very 70s. This is the Jargoon Pard. Andre Norton again. The Shape Changer. I lifted my head. My position seemed awkward. I could see only at an angle, but I was on my hands and knees. No, I was on 4 padded paws, wearing a body covered in light golden fur. I opened my mouth to cry out, but what issued from my jaws was a heavy half-grunt, half-growl sound. He was called Kethin, and the secret of his birth had been hidden, until now. He had been chosen to lead the great house of Car Dopran in the ancient land of Arvon, but his cousin Magus was jealous and hated him, and Ursula, his mother's evil wise woman, had already begun to tamper with his destiny. Then one day, Kethin was given a gift, a belt of incredible beauty and possessing great powers. From this moment on, Kethin's future was in other hands, and his body in a strange new shape. Oh, cool. I didn't realize that one was about a shapeshifter, so I'm more interested in that now. Next I have, this is the first part of a trilogy that's set in the same universe. And this is another DAW book, actually, number 75. This is The Crystal Griffin. Paperback readers will be equally pleased, for The Crystal Griffin is decidedly one of Andre Norton's finest. Taking place in the same alien world as the best-selling Witchworld novels, it is the story of Caravan, half human, half something else, who sought his rightful heritage to the throne of Ulm at a time when strange sea invaders were shattering the old kingdoms and equally enigmatic manifestations of the old ones were coming again to interfere with humanity. Interesting, interesting. I like the art. Another DAW edition here. This is number 440. This one's much later. This is from the early 80s. This is a Horn Crown. Love that gold foil lettering there. When the Elder People deserted the Witchworld, the Cosmic Gate opened and human households migrated in. Though they found the land abandoned, the roads empty, and the shrines unattended, they soon became aware that the old gods still retained their dread powers. Elrond the clanless and Gathea the wise woman were drawn unwillingly side by side into unexplored realms. Each had a separate quest, but their fates were linked by the unknown. Each sought an unholy alliance. Each was in conflict with the other. So yeah, cool. And this is actually part of the 10th anniversary of DAW books, so yeah, that's pretty cool. Then these last 3 are story collections that are all written by Andre Norton. There are some later story collections, anthologies that are written by multiple authors, but these were the 3 that were originally written by Norton. First we have High Sorcery. The Mistress of Enchantment brews a potion of high sorcery. Here are some of the ingredients. Crake, a man hunted in 2 worlds. Miss Ruthvan, whose needles pointed to secret kingdoms. Countess Anna, who called on unnamed gods for justice. Uli, a piper of Witchworld who played for the oldest dancers of all. Temisan, the dreamer who found herself the prey of her own dreams. Together they cast a spell of wonder from the beloved creator of the Witchworld. So this is just a collection of short stories, or novellas, but one of them in here is a Witchworld story, Uli the Piper. So I grabbed that. This one I was really happy to get. This is DAW Books number 1, the very first DAW paperback ever published. I don't think this, but yeah, this was Andre Norton's Spell of the Witchworld, the very, very first DAW book ever published. Somewheres in the infinite spaces beyond the galaxy we know lies a planet with a strange affinity to the Earth. For Earthling blood had crossed that incomprehensible vastness to mingle with the human but alien civilizations of that untracked world. Earthling blood brought through an ancient door set down between the world and times unknown. Andre Norton's marvelous novels of the Witchworld, so distant that the very laws of space and time differ from those that govern our cosmic sector, have been compared by critics to the work of J.R.R. Tolkien of Lord of the Rings fame, and equally to the great interplanetary adventures of Clifford Samac or an Edgar Rice Burroughs. But there is nothing copycat in Andre Norton's work, and in Spell of the Witchworld we have a fantasy reading treat that compares favorably to the greatest of them all. Here is the 7th book of the Witchworld saga, with all the color and super science imagery of those that have gone before. Here you will meet the twins, Elise, the witch sister, and Ellen, the warrior brother, and the pact that drew both into perils beyond the laws of our everyday stars. So yeah, I was mostly really happy to find this, because as I said, it's the very, very first DAW paperback. I don't believe this is a first edition. Let me check. You know what? This might be a first edition. I don't see any other info in there, and the logo looks correct and everything, so this might be a first edition. If so, that's even more cool. It's a little faded on the spine, unfortunately. It's not the best quality, but I'm just really happy to have that. So, yeah, really excited to dig into that eventually. And then finally, we have one of the later collections. This is from 1980. DAW books again, number 400. This is Lore of the Witch World. The Witch World, far away in space and time. The Witch World has become the legendary home of all who dream and wonder of unknown worlds. C.J. Cherry, in the introduction to this latest Witch World book, writes, "The Witch World is never explored. The smallest valley holds strange happenings and a past which reaches into things greater still. The traveler finds the unexpected, the ancient, the bizarre at every turn. Nature is powerful here, and those who open their hearts to it and to living things find themselves capable of marvels and involved in an old warfare. One meets old friends here and hears of them, finds remnants of eldritch powers and visitants, finds, if one looks, ancient truths about courage and honesty and duty that involve the highborn and the ordinary, the young and the old, humans and the four-footed kind, all in one fabric of magic and mystery. Lore of the Witch World brings in one volume all the novelettes and tales which have not previously been collected, including the never previously published novelette Changeling." Cool. So again, a little bit faded on the spine, not the greatest quality, but I'm just really happy to have these. These are just really cool vintage stuff, and I'm really excited to dig into the world of Witch World. Andre Norton is one of those authors who's very influential. Last year, I read her book Quag Keep, which was the very first Dungeons and Dragons novel, and I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. So I very much look forward to these, and I hope I'm looking forward to them because I've got about 20 of them now to read. Now that I've bought the ones that I'm missing, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so that was everything that I bought on this crazy vintage sci-fi Christmas haul. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know, have you read any of these authors, any of these books? What did you think of them? Where would you recommend I start? You know, get a conversation going. Talk to me. Comment. Let's go. Books. So yeah, until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.